少しだけですよね
欲しいんだったらいいよ別に。俺はジョンが車で大丈夫。別に今日泊まってってもいいけど、俺明日山登りがあるから、
そうだね。
明日俺8時半に家出るだけだから、それでいいんだったらジョンが別に大丈夫だったら俺は別に作ってもいいよ。You want it or not? It depends on you. 泊まりたいか泊まりたくないか。車乗ってって帰るんだったら別に構わないよ。こんなこと僕がするべきじゃないかもしれないけど。
そうだね。明日も仕事だし。Well, anyways, I think we can talk first and see how it goes.
Okay, let's go. Let's do it like this.
Yeah.
まあエディットいくらでもできるから別に自由にしてフリースタイルでいこう。なんかこう調節しながらとかなんかライブだと思ってやっていくっていうのもありだと思うし。さあジョンなんか見ようぜ。なんかジョンがなんかそうだな、いきなりなんかその無茶ぶりするってのもあれだし、なんか夢のことに関しても、俺今日変な夢見たんだよな。そういえばなんか前の彼女が出てくる夢でなんか怒られてたいうのがあって、ちなみになんだけど俺のその彼女っていうのはもう死んでんのね。3年ぐらい前にキャンサーで死んだんだけど、でなんか出てきてなんか怒られる夢みたいなのが出てきて、でも夢ってなんかもしかしたら死んだ人が出てくるんだったら、その人死んだ人がもしかしたら俺の夢にインターフェイス関わってきたのことかもしれないし、あるいはただ俺の昔の脳の中の記憶が出てきただけなのかもしれない。でもよく言うのって夢ってなんか死んでるのと生きてるの境界線とも言えるじゃん。もしかしたらこの前の金縛りって英語でなんだっけ？Is any word for
sleep paralysis.
Okay.
Yeah, sleep paralysis.
そういうことを考えると、もしかして there is like something like more physical stuff or maybe like kind of like a spiritual stuff. You said it could be like the body like out from like an astral type come out, and so this kind of things are coming.
But it's like the whole thing about someone who you loved or like you knew who may have passed on to the other side can sometimes visit you in your dream. This has been like recorded many times in from ancient times, where actually it usually happens when they passed on, just like in a short amount of time, like a week or two later, or even a few years later, they could sometimes like come into your dream and like give messages and whatnot. Well, some people say, well, this could be just like a memory you have of them, and it's just like it's constructed in your mind and whatnot and everything. But they are like legitimate so-called like contacts people can receive through dreaming as well. I mean, there's a lot of tradition in ancient times where you get a lot of like prophetic dreams, where when people do have this idea that like in ancient times that the dreaming phase is a time in which you can communicate with spirits and gods, basically, or your dead ancestors and whatnot. There are many instances even in world literature where like some heroes or like some persons receive like prophetic dream in which they're being warned about something, and it comes true and everything. And that kind of reminds me of this guy. This is not just an ancient thing, but even recently as well, like this whole 9/11 thing as well, right?
Yeah.
And there was like
someone dreamed about this before.
Yeah, there was like an artist, I think in America or somewhere, who kept on dreaming about this whole collapsing of 9/11, the Twin Tower and 9/11 and everything, and he's an artist, so he drew it, and he took a picture each time he drew that picture, and like the recordings there's a date on the on the photograph that it's been suggested that was like it was taken in 1997 or 1995. All these like drawing everything. So people say, how did he know? Right? And it's like it was like several years back before this whole 9/11 happened, and like it was like he was receiving these kind of dreams in which these like some kind of world events could happen as well. So it's quite unusual in that sense.
Even I had this the story like some of like a manga writer. I think she dreamt about the 311, the Higashi Nihon Daishinsai. She saw this on a dream and she drawing a manga, and after this like earthquake happened, like it's some like the people discovered like this is like written like in the 90s, like how come she knew it? Then like その人に like somebody contact her to the interview, and she was saying like she dreamt about this earthquake happens and a flood happens. So this kind of like a big thing event, like some people can like not predict, but just like can dream about this kind of thing. John, have you ever like experienced this kind of thing, like kind of like?
Well, it may sound a bit kind of like silly or mundane, but I did have dreams in which, one time when I was working in one of the jobs, I was like working in like restaurants, right?
Well, in Japan or UK?
And in UK, and we always have this like a shift for each day, and like for the next day and everything. Sometimes they'll tell you what time you should come in, and, in the morning or lunchtime or whatnot. Then at one time I forgot to actually take a picture of it, so I completely forgot. I was like, oh shit! Well, what time am I supposed to come in tomorrow? Am I supposed to be coming tomorrow in the morning or in the afternoon or in the lunchtime? I was like so dreading everything, and I was like, oh shit, and I was like shitting myself, and like on that day I was kind of like taking a break or something, and I just like rested a bit, and I had this like a dream. I had this image in my dream where I was just like laying down.
Well, you saw the picture over there, the shifts.
Yeah. It felt like something came from behind me, like something. No, seriously.
This is you working tomorrow morning.
No, something flew next to my back, and that thing or being kind of showed me like the shape. It's like they pointed it. I mean, I don't think I saw it visually, but it kind of like I intuitively knew at that moment I should be coming in at lunchtime. Then I kind of trusted that message of maybe it's lunchtime. I just went in. It was lunchtime, dude. It was really weird. It's like it was so bizarre that I had no idea what time I should be coming in, and I was kind of foretold in my dream that you should be coming in on lunchtime. I did, and it's like it worked. It was like,
but that's make a sense. Like that's like kind of like a sense. You believe your instinct like is 直感、ある意味直感とも言えるかもしれない。
It's like because I've been told once that the first intuition or feeling you get from the dream is usually correct. That's what I've been told before. Then
who told you that?
I mean, I kind of like I was in like a book. I've read it in a book first. Then I was in this kind of like group who practice
how do you like control the dream or something?
Yeah,
really?
People who practice
dream. Lucid dream. What is it called?
Oh yeah, lucid dreaming. And lucid dreaming, out of body experience of the people who practice those kind of. And I was taking that course, and I was like,
okay, basically what they do, like what I heard is like before you do, you like you image like what you want to do. When you sleep and when you dream, like you start like you have to realize yourself it's a dream, then you can start controlling. Is that true? Or like what you did? Tell me. That's what I know.
Well, in the course I've taken that time, where people are practicing dream exploration, out of body experiences, and lucid dreaming kind of people, they were basically like, it was less of a theory and it was more practical and based on, they try to base things on your experiencing kind of thing. So they don't really give you much in regards to what this means, what this dream means and everything. They actually encourage you to actually explore and investigate by yourself to get it, because what they say was that their method, which I really liked, was like, okay, we'll give you this technique, you go and practice the technique and see what you gain from experienced it. And like, and they said, these people who are teaching and the instructor, they're like, okay, I can't analyze your dream, you have to like, investigate and they kind of encourage you to be more objective in your own search, because what they said was like, basically if you took people's like interpretation, it may just become a belief. You get it? You've never do it. Meaning like you just take it for the face value, basically. So like, they said something like, your dream can only be interpreted by you, because it's coming from your background, your experience and everything, symbology and everything. Of course, they're like common themes of symbols you can see in like dreams, and like if you dream about, for example, elephants or tigers and everything, they symbolize something as well. There is that kind of like a universal symbolism in dreams as well.
So, like when you falling from something, then that means like what I heard is like you have cancer or something, or you have like something problem in brain or something. It's like, so maybe it's like a more illness side, but this, for example, maybe blue. Once I had this like once I had a dream, it's like a firebird, like phoenix. I saw it. It was like it was a sea on a boat, and it was a phoenix was just there. It just standing there, and it was like kind of like a really powerful dream. So as soon as when I woke up, I just like wrote down the notes. Like it was like really powerful, because firebird, it's not like something that somebody draw or like somebody made a decision. It was firebird was like standing on the boat. So it was like really powerful. I don't know what does it mean, but it was something like really strong, like a dream.
Yeah, so it's kind of like those kind of vivid dreams or symbology could represent the whole theme of that dream you had. You get it? Like, there are like some common themes among like dreams and symbology as well. Like, I hear like the quite common dream people have is like, was it your tooth is coming out?
I dreamt so many times of that one. I did that. It's
that's a very common like a theme in a dream. I
researched myself. It was like about like if you have like something, it's about like losing your money or something like
it's this. It talks about loss or kind of like,
I always get scared because when I saw this dream, this is always like I'm like facing like my mouth to pillow and trying to take out my tooth or something. It's just like so big. When the tooth came out, and just like when I woke up, and it's just
it's so realistic sometimes, right? And you kind of like, there's a cold sweat when you wake up, and it kind of shows how real a dream can be. Like,
so it's true.
So it's like kind of thematic thing is quite interesting. And I had like, I mean, I don't analyze it too much in recent years, but I had like really like some kind of unusual dreams as well, where it's kind of like Yeah.
Tell me.
It's not like a big thing, but like there's another thing about like in dream where they can point to something, right? Like when I was like exploring about dreams and out of body experiences as well, I remember I was being taught, and in my dream I was like taught, I had this like a image of like the Giza pyramid, right? And there was a sphinx. Yes. And there was this like person or like a being who was like floating over this like sphinx, and she or he, I don't know what gender that being was, like pointed towards the left paw of the sphinx, like this. And the gut feeling I had that time was like, oh, I should check out what's actually under the paw of the sphinx and everything. Lo and behold, it's been rumored that something is hidden under there. At that time, I actually didn't know about this, and it was kind of weird. And I just Google searched, what's underneath the sphinx paw and everything.
So it was I think the recent like news. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, wasn't it? Like something they found like under the sphinx.
Yeah. And then people are always like speculating there's actually like some kind of like hidden chamber underneath the sphinx and everything. And like the mainstream archaeologists who are working on it don't want to actually talk about it and everything. But these people who are like alternative researchers are always suggesting there must be something underneath the sphinx and everything. There's like so much evidence stacking up to it. And the interesting thing is like even there's an American psychic called Edgar Casey. Yeah. He was being called the sleeping prophet, basically. So he did a lot of his like predictions and like past life recalls, and like he was able to see things in the past and everything. But how he did it was quite interesting, where he actually, when he's been kind of like requested by some client to look through their past lives or like something related to their lives and everything, he actually sits on a chair, like lies a bit flat. He goes into this kind of like half asleep, half awake state, and he is almost look like sleeping, but he's like, I think he's conscious at the same time. Then he basically go through. He says he accessed Akashic records and the other kind of side and everything. He looks through that person's like past lives and everything, and he's able to like recall a lot of things that was happening and everything. And there are actually many records of his readings. He called it readings, where he's in that kind of trance state, right? And someone is there asking Edgar Casey.
聞いたことある like even like a CIA they use him to like search about like behind the moon or Mars or something like this, and he drew a picture or something like this.
Yeah. And one of the predictions, or like one of the things Edgar Casey used to say a lot, was actually the Sphinx as well.
Oh, so
yeah. And he did. Interesting thing is, like, I don't know if I recall it accurately, but he did say something about there is a hidden chamber underneath the left side of the Sphinx paw. There's about 6 or 7 hidden chambers underneath it, and they have this like a tablet under the chamber.
聞いたことある Emerald tablet. Emerald tablet or something like this, maybe, but I heard it.
There's like some kind of tablet that records the history of the humanity.
Yes, I think it's an Emerald tablet. Yeah, I heard that. And it's like it's kind of like Akashic record of like this tablet version or something. 聞いたことある
Yeah, so it's kind of like a record that's being kept underneath the Sphinx, and it's gonna be open one day or something, but it's not now or something. And in the future, it's gonna be open, and the humanity will know their true origins and history, and then because it's all been like recorded on the tablet or this like object basically. And I think when I heard that, was quite interesting.
It's make sense about your dream as well, like maybe.
It's kind of interesting. I pointed to that and I researched it, and these kind of things come up together. So it's like dead interesting.
Yeah.
And and people say, well, it's quite famous. Well, maybe, but to be honest, it's all these kind of small things that my personal experiences that kind of confirm that dreams are not just like a
something
mumbo
illusion
of thing in the past and as well, because there are like certain disciplines and techniques that even within religion people use dreams to explore different realms within the religious cosmology. So one of the most famous known was like the Tibetan Buddhisms, like they have this like discipline called dream yoga. So we know about yoga, right? I mean, it's like yoga is basically, it means union. So it's like a technique in which you can connect with higher forces and divine energies and through your body movements and everything. But I think Tibetans had this different take on this, and they developed a yoga based on dreaming, meaning like, from what I kind of briefly know, they use dreaming as a form of yogic technique in which they can actually explore their inner kind of dimension whilst they're dreaming, kind of thing. It's kind of interesting that technique is almost like mirroring what Edgar Cayce was doing, basically. Do you get it? And they
in trance and like a kind
of So Edgar Cayce was, in a sense, that he was like in a half wake, half sleep state in which he can explore these kind of like the world records or Akashic records, how they say, in which all the records of humanity is doing is recorded in this other dimension or something. And like a lot of people say actually you can access those things, but you have to have certain skills or like techniques and
skills. I don't know, it's like make a sense, like what is it, Simon hypnotic, it's like 対抗催眠って英語でなんて言うんだっけ? I tried it once. Do you know what is this?
Hypnosis?
Yeah, hypnosis, but do you know what is a 対抗催眠? Like it becomes like the hypnosis like take you to like when you're like a child, and just you meet like when you're like a kid, like it's called an inner child.
Okay.
So, but this thing is like you go into like a more past, like you can meet like somebody in the past and then the hypnosis. 対抗催眠って聞いたことない?
But I heard things like past life regression, in which you use the hypnosis techniques in which you recall your past lives.
Sounds like really like similar to that. I don't know, just take you to like kind of trance. Then you try to see in your soul, like your mind, like your past or like the what is like in subconscious. I don't know. It just sounds like really similar to that to me. Anyway.
Yeah. So it's that kind of. There is that kind of like connection between, recalling the past through dreaming and that kind of trance state, and you can even see, some people even can see the future as well, and like through dreaming as well. So it's kind of strange that these things don't get talked about in mainstream too much. You get it? Because how do you quantify a dream, right? You can't put it underneath the microscope and examine it and through the laboratory, right? So I think science is having a problem now that there are certain things in which science can't explain as well. But as we all know, like if you're talking about quantum physics and that kind of thing, in which we are starting to explore different dimensions that science has verify that there are actually multiple dimensions within our universe as well.
Yeah, I think there's included dream as well. Yes.
Yeah. So one thing for sure that the science has definitely verified is like the dimension of time. Let's say we're in the first, second, and third dimension. We're in the third dimension, right? Fourth dimension is the time dimension, in which things flow according to the time scale and everything. But now quantum physics is proposing the idea that there might be actually like 11 dimensions within the.
Yes, I heard that as well.
Yeah.
Yes, 11 could make sense.
Yeah, so they even have proposed like dimension of electronics, electricity and all these like different dimensions. I'm not expert in quantum physics, and quantum physics is like the most difficult like scientific field at the moment. So I remember one person said like, if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics. It's that level. So the physicists are having struggle as well, like in how they're gonna interpret it. But it's been like they're getting there, and like they're starting to explore things and everything. So I mean, I'm not. So there's that kind of like dimensional kind of thing happening as well, and it's.
聞いたことある。The scientists when they like explore the quantum physics and they start trying to they start believing in God because it's so like mysterious stuff. So it's like they kind of think this is just like kind of like they kind of explain everything with scientific stuff. It's like they start believing like God. So I heard like some like scientists that turn to like a priest or something.
Yeah. A lot of like atheistic kind of like scientists or like physicists who did study about the mechanics of science and like the origins of the universe and whatnot has kind of like concluded that there is that kind of like maybe a creative force behind all this together, because how everything is formed in our Earth, in the universe, is actually so precise. The chances of that emerging
like
out of probability is so low.
Miracle to like a miracle.
Exactly. And you would think to yourself, how on earth did all this come about with chance? What chance? I'm not saying, of course, I'm not saying there's no chance of it emerging like this out of random, chaotic kind of like chances and everything. There's always a probability, but it's so minute and low that you think to yourself, and everything is like so precise. And I think Stephen Hawking was like famous quantum, physicist. Stephen Hawking has once said that if you even like just like even fidget a tiny minute number to that probability, all the universe will collapse because it's so fine.
How does like it's on the needles, like
exactly.
the Earth is not in the needles.
So it's like so finely tuned that if you even slightly move the fine tuning, then everything will collapse into nothingness.
That makes sense.
So it's like what on earth, and how people are starting to say, and even like Albert Einstein was one of the most famous scientists in our times, and even he proposed that kind of like God of the science, physics or science. And it's like he believed in that kind of like kind of deistic God, in which I think that deistic kind of God is like in which you don't put a label into that God. So it's kind of like it's a force that creates everything, and it's probably conscious and intelligent, but he has no name, or he has no attribute that you can specifically point to.
Well, in like some like religion, they say like it's not allowed to do it. Even like Muslim, like you shouldn't like picture of a god or something like that, because you can't, or it's
exactly.
not.
So it's a very kind of like what to put it, impersonal god, basically impersonal
It
creation.
could be just like a light, as like you just said before. It's like maybe it's just like around us. It's just like light, so it's not like there's a shape. I don't know.
Yeah. So even so, that kind of idea that people are adhering to, like famous scientists are adhering to, and like I mean, I don't think in recent years. I mean, it used to be back in decade or ago, like militant atheists, and they say nothing exists, and like we're all just matter, we just die, and everything just goes into nothing.
Dust or something.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
nothingness. And well, maybe, but how can you prove that there aren't? Well, you can't prove that creative intelligence doesn't exist. Yeah. Because scientists cannot explain how consciousness is emerging. How do you can say, well, technically both of us are just like a piece of meat, right? We're just talking. How can piece of meat just talk to each other?
True. Exactly.
Where
that's strange. Like if you see from like just like both protein based like things just talking.
Exactly. Right. Well, you can say, well, then how do you explain consciousness? Well, scientists are having very difficult time explaining consciousness, and people say, well, if nothing came from nothing, how come we can be conscious in that nothingness? Do you get it? Are we just dancing to a programming of our DNA? Do you get it? Everything. Of course, I think DNA and what we inherit from our own ancestors play a part in how we interact, and like our development of our brains and organs, and like bodily function and everything. But it doesn't explain about this conscious part of ourselves, right? Yeah. So I mean, scientists having a difficult time explaining that, and it's very difficult to say what not. But it's interesting, like how going back to this whole dream kind of escape landscape as well. Like that reminds me, even in like Aboriginal mythology as well. Their creation myth is actually based on dream.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's almost like they say the Aboriginal gods actually dreamt the world into existence. So they call that dream time, in which each of the deities actually dream certain formation in the earth, and becomes that earth. If they dream about say lakes or mountains and everything, that becomes like that kind of formation and everything. And the dreams play a huge part in Aboriginal mythology as well, which is really interesting. And a lot of people say, well, Aboriginal people, blah blah blah, they're not civilized or whatever, but they actually love. I mean, this is like I don't think that's true at all, because if you see a lot of the paintings and carved paintings as well, they love interesting details. Yeah.
It's like I think it was this like big head, like kind of people, like big eye kind of people. It's like,そんな感じの見たことある気がする。
They have very like of course, as any like culture, they have a very animistic and shamanic view of the world as well, in which everything has some certain living force or spirit to get behind it. Everything is very common in all culture to get it. So I mean, all this talking about the this whole dream landscape and out of body experience as well. There are many like incident tribal cultures in our ancient times in which people used that kind of like out of body experience as a dream to do certain spiritual practice as well. One of the most famous ones is like the shamans of ancient past. Like even now in the when we say shaman, we always think about Siberia area because that's where the word comes from, shaman.
Oh yeah.
It's a Taoist word meaning like I forgot what the etymology of the word is, but like I think something to do with like the wise man or like don't quote me on this because I can't remember what the actual original term is, but like when we say shaman, we're actually using that kind of Siberian language to explain it. But basically what they are doing is what a lot of these like shamans are doing is like they fall into like a trance state as well, in which they usually use like
mushroom.
Hallucinogenic like substances like
ayahuasca だってそうじゃん。ayahuasca is the same thing.
Yeah.
You take this one and you become like
so
kind of trance.
that's that Peruvian kind of like traditional shamanism, right, in South America. But like in Siberian tradition they use Amanita muscaria, which is like that red and white dot mushroom that causes hallucinogenic effect and everything. And
that's where the Santa Claus comes, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not expert on Siberian shamanism, but what I've heard was like basically how these Siberian shamans prepare this kind of hallucinogenic drink in which they can fall into the trance state is to feed it to the reindeers, and when reindeers basically urinate from that drink, they actually drink that pee and then they fall into a trance doing that. And there are other methods for it. Probably like boil it and like drink the certain liquids from that as well. But they say I think it has more potency if it goes through the body system.
That makes sense. Yeah. It sounds like really similar to the. Have you ever heard like a mad honey bee?
Yes.
It's the same as like the flower itself is like poison, like it's toxic, but the bee takes it and when processed through the body system, then becomes like kind of the honey that makes it trance.
Exactly. Probably. Yeah, exactly. It may have the same effect as like basically extracting the poison out of the.
Even I heard this story, like some of like the dolphins, they play with the blowfish, the food. Blowfish has a poison, right? They like how do you say it? Nudge them, like and they from a blowfish the poison come out and makes the dolphin like a trance, and the dolphin like enjoy this like kind of like trance. So so from a poison like is this kind of thing that extract it. Even the dolphin play with this kind of thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. There's that kind of like natural interaction within the animal kingdom as well, which we can reciprocate certain interaction substances in which they can, like fall into certain trance state and everything, and like so through that, and it kind of reminds me as well, like I'm kind of looking into a bit more. I've been kind of exposed to this whole reindeer mythology in recent times, so in which actually, like in an Arctic region especially, the reindeer motif is very common, like bear and reindeer motif. If you like northern Siberia, and there are like many nomadic people when they they do reindeer herding and everything, and it's a kind of like if you're looking at like northern. Like in northern Norway, in Scandinavia, they have the Sami people. They do reindeer herding as well, and they have this tradition in which they consider reindeer to be very magical creature, like extremely magical.
As you say, like the animal, the creature has like two horns. It's like a symbolic of like a duality. Something
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
this, right?
So it's that kind of like having the quality of like the magical side as well.
I think so. Even like in the Hindu, there's a cows or something like really powerful creature. What else? Like deer in Japan is the same. Like someone like the mountains god. It's like somebody. I guess you saw that in the movie Mononoke Hime. Even that when the god is like has like deer has like human face kind of thing. Some people, I read in the internet, like some people saw this thing in the mountain, like the face, like human face deer. So I don't know, deer, this kind of four-legged, the horn, and the creatures that must have like some kind of a spiritual power.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No. I'm just because that reminded me of like went back to the whole Siberian shamanism, like how they made the reindeer ingest Amanita muscaria to digest it and make it urinate, and the shamans drink that urination and everything. That kind of reminded me. I don't know what the folklore behind Siberian kind of culture is, but if that was like connected to how Sami views reindeer as being magical creature, maybe making reindeer ingest, reindeer meaning magical creature, ingest this Amanita muscaria, made it more potent in their kind of magical quality, or like the spiritual quality, and drinking that, could potentially bring into a higher state of like transcendence, basically. Maybe that's I'm just theorizing because why?
That makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, that could play a part of it, but it's kind of interesting because when they drink that, they fall into a trance and everything. They use drums. Drums are very common.
Yeah, like when you like this kind of like trance, when you hear the drums, it just makes you like it's like takes you to like I feel that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've heard somewhere like the whole the drum, the beat of the drum is actually mimicking like a heartbeat. So. Exactly, and it's almost like I read it somewhere like where you actually meditate on the drumming sound. It's done in a certain sequence and rhythmic way in which we can, if you listen to that enough, you fall into that trance state and you actually can take the whole so-called shamanic journey in which you can access your kind of like inner side or inner psychology through trance state and everything. And they say something like when you hear the heartbeat, it's actually I don't know exactly what I heard was like it almost takes you back to when you were
baby,
like a baby and when you're in the womb. You're hearing the sound of your mother's heartbeat and everything. You're going back into that kind of like before you were created.
Yeah, I heard that story, like similar story when you human hear like a water sound when it's like from a river like floating. It's like reminds you when you baby in your stomach when you how to say like in the water like it's like reminds you. That's why the humans like they feel like comfortable with water's sound. I heard.
Yeah. So it's that kind of like it has that kind of symbolic kind of connotation as well when they do use drum for their kind of spiritual practice. Exactly, it's that kind of like trance state in which you're taken back into the state of like uncreatedness or like when you were before you were born and everything, and that's interesting and like.
Yes, this touches your like subconscious, like maybe reminds you like when you're baby.
Exactly, and like you see depiction where actually like shamans lying down, lay down like they're asleep, right? You have this like a shamanic assistance when they're dropping. And some people say they're actually having like out of body experiences. Because they're taking the hallucinogenic mushroom and they're sleeping, and then someone's drumming beside them. They're taking them into deeper and deeper trances as well. And what they say is like they have this whole, if you're talking about shamanic kind of cosmology, they have this like world tree kind of thing as a concept. They have this like the upper world, the middle world, and
that sounds like from like Scandinavian
myth, exactly. North mythology, you have the tree of Yggdrasil, where they have the higher world, Asgard, the Midgard, and what was it, the lower regions, Niflheim, like hell basically hell region. So even in this like shamanism, and they have this like higher world, middle world and lower world as well. What they do is like depending on where they access, what kind of information they want to access, the shamans will climb up the tree, the symbolic tree of the light, tree of
goes sky high.
Yeah, if they usually say the celestial gods are usually up the higher realm of the upper world, and they go and access. They say they negotiate with these like deities, in which they will ask for help for good hunt, or like good harvest, what they bring. I mean, like in those regions you can't really harvest too much, but like any like protection for their own villages and like giving good luck to the people around them as well. Sometimes they even go into their own underworld, basically, in which they meet certain deities or ancestors, in which they can communicate as well, where they can like negotiate certain favors and whatnot. So they have this, in a very common general terms, like they call it shamanic journey, in which they fall into a deep trance, which is like a form of lucid dreaming in a sense, in which they can fall into that state and access certain realms and deities and spirits, in which they can negotiate things and whatnot, which is really interesting. But it's a kind of like, so the whole concept of shamanism uses that kind of like a dream trance state to aid in their spiritual practice as well. Quite interesting. And dream states and these experiences has played a vital role in our ancient history up to this day. So I'm just wondering why people aren't talking about it a lot more. Do you get it? What your dream is and everything. I mean, I heard like dreams are quite personal to you, so you shouldn't share it too much with other people. I mean, their dreams you can share as well, depending on everything. So
Shall we 一回これ終わりにしてパート2に持っていこうか。
Yeah, sure.